I did it with Alden, and this time I did it with Granfia. I have one of the most exciting deck profiles for you of this year to showcase to you guys how I took Granfia to the next level. If you guys don't know who Lavien Lord Granfia is, I don't blame you. Lavien Lord Granfia was introduced to us all the way back in Dragon Tree Invasions at the start of the new series of Cardfight Vanguard, Overdress. Being introduced in this set, it came with Almagestar as well as Griffogilia, and introduced the introduction of the Noblesse Rose token. This is a very new mechanic, making plant tokens into gauges to be used as cost or power-ups for this Noblesse Rose token to trigger Granfia's skill of getting multiple attacks, early game plant token rush, and introducing a new way of using the plant token mechanics for the Stoichea nation. Forgotten to the wayside, Lavien Lord Granfia has not received any fantastic direct support ever since the introduction of Rosarium Fairy and the promo card Luster Impact Dragon. This deck has fallen into obscurity for a lot of people, but I'm ready to showcase to you guys all the amazing things about Lavien Lord Granfia and what it can do right now. So definitely stay tuned for that, and if you enjoy seeing content like this, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Do not forget to hit the notification bell so you guys are always seeing my newest videos coming out. Now, to find out how I was able to take Granfia to the next level, we need to understand all the good things about Granfia and the bad things. And Granfia has some pretty good things going for him even since he came out. The most important thing to understand about Granfia is the fact that this is a plant token rush deck. In the early game with your ride line, you want to emphasize using cards and effects to get more plant tokens onto the board to be soul charged in for a Noblesse Rose token later. Being able to get more plant tokens onto the board and attack your opponent with means that we're going to be able to do 2 to 3 attacks every single turn, forcing more cards out of their hand prior to us going to our first grade 3. With that element of the plant token rush and the value of those plant tokens being converted into something later versus just being called over like other decks, Granfia was able to take full advantage of all the resources needed that went into making those plant tokens. And with future support as well as better ways of generating plant tokens conveniently, Granfia's numbers have become really good. The Noblesse Rose token is definitely a huge part of this, as being able to accumulate more plant gauges means Granfia's center Vanguard attack power keeps going higher and higher. And because of Granfia's secondary effect to pass on the Noblesse token's power to another unit, you will have 2 out of your 4 attacks being extremely fantastic numbers. Now, in other Granfia decks, this was a problem in the past, being able to make those other 2 attacks not irrelevant. But with future cards that came out, as well as more support that exists, as well as more order support that exists, we were able to mitigate this issue. So Granfia has always had fantastic numbers, and especially during the Persona ride turns with the 4 attacks that it has, this deck has definitely gotten a lot better at that. And because we have Plant Token Rush, fantastic numbers, we actually are able to do all of this and take advantage of these high power cards because of Granfia's low resource cost. If you look at any Granfia support card, outside of just 1 or 2, Granfia is actually a pretty free deck. The Vanguard creates a Noblesse Rose token, which if you don't play against control, you should only have to hopefully make once, costing you only 1 Soul Blast. Rosarium Fairy is just to retire. Your other rear guards cost Soul or move themselves into Soul, which convert themselves ironically back into the resource needed to activate other plant token generation effects or the Soul Blasting effects, so it doesn't really cost anything. Granfia being a low-cost deck means that we can take advantage of all the awesome Stoichea cards that have high cost and resources in a deck that doesn't require really a lot of anything. Unfortunately, those were all the good things about Granfia, and these are 3 key things that have really been holding this deck back from competing at the next level. Granfia is a deck that relies on its rear guards. You need those plant tokens, you want those Luster Impacts, those Rosarium Fairies, those onboard plant token generators. Everything that you put onto the board essentially was key to your strategy. If Granfia faced against any form of control or did not see its pieces, this deck was going to have a hard time. In order to get the restand of Granfia anyway, you need to give up 3 token units to even get the restand. God forbid you had to get rid of your Noblesse Rose token to do that, you would have to spend a soul every single turn, getting the Noblesse back, getting more plant gauges, and it'd be very exhausting on a deck that already doesn't accumulate the best card advantage, which led to its second problem. Granfia's card advantage has never been the best, and while the support has existed, like Darien as well as Luster Impact Dragon to mitigate this issue, it still is a problem. While it's not as bad as it was in introduction and the new stuff coming out for Stoichea in terms of improving your card advantage, Granfia and a lot of the decks that I do see still has that issue. Having to give up slots to play cards that help you draw cards, or just having to commit to full aggro has definitely hurt this deck because it really is just a pure glass cannon. Being reliant on rear guards, but also having not the best card advantage to get more rear guards back would definitely affect this deck in a bad way. But one of the other awkward issues that I've already talked about with this deck numerous times is its inconsistent numbers. Now, Granfia, don't get me wrong, is a deck that can make some very fantastic numbers within the 50 to even 60k range. However, if you play against any of the decks that had those elements that would mess with you, or if you didn't see the pieces you need to make the plant gauges needed, then your numbers are pretty inconsistent. Because the center column has advantage of the Noblesse Rose token, and you need at least 3 to get stand, that means that your Noblesse Rose token in your Vanguard is paying for 33k at best. You give up 3 plant gauges, hopefully not the Noblesse, you get 15k another unit. But you still have 2 attacks that you have to worry about. So Granfia having 2 attacks that were going to be low numbered or not have support outside of their own effects or triggers mean that your opponent really only had to worry about 2 out of the 4 attacks that they were going to have to deal with, which at this point in Cardfight Vanguard Divine Z, with how fast everything is and the numbers that other decks can do, is not good at all. Granfia is definitely one of those decks that has a very unique play style, but with all of its good and its bad coming forward, the bad unfortunately keeps eating up the good. Now, taking a look at a lot of modern day Granfia lists, which I'm going to showcase now, definitely highlights some of the problems that we've talked about already, as well as some of the good things going for it. This right here is a generic Lavien Lord Granfia list. This is for the standard format and showcases Granfia's aggro side, as the deck wants to play with a sort of plant token rush beatdown style of play, taking advantage of cards like Ran Orangery, Luster Impact Dragon, Rosarium Fairy to make good numbers, get plant tokens consistently without a cost has definitely been fantastic for the deck. A lot of newer additions into this deck that I am seeing is the Friendly Broccoli, Alvina, as well as the new Regalius Order Bracing Angel Ladder. This way you can get some extra draw power, some more superior calling without using any heavy resources, as well as Bracing Angel Ladder protect your rear guards. This is a very generic Granfia list, and one that I've seen a lot of people play, or a lot of people I would expect to opt into. Here you have multiple plant token generators, you have Rosarium for big numbers, same thing with Luster, you're playing the defensive Friendly Broccoli who makes a good number and has a shield value, as well as Alvina who can go ahead and get some of your cards back. But unlike Diantha, Alvina is weaker, so you do sacrifice power, but if you're trying to save up on CB to take advantage of cards like Darien and get more counterblast cost out of that, that makes sense. While this list is extremely generic, I definitely do think that when I look at other Granfia decks, there's something that we can go ahead and push and take it to the next level. Stoichea, the nation itself, within the past 3 sets of Cardfight Vanguard Divine Z, has received some extremely powerful support pieces. And with the introduction of the energy mechanic and more cards using energy as a resource, we now have another resource outside of Counterblast that we can look into to investing to fix our issues with this deck. At this point, you guys have seen the good and the bad parts about Granfia, an idea of what the deck can do. I want to go ahead and talk about now on each step of the way that I was looking at fixing Granfia's issues to take this deck to the next level. Now, one of the first issues that I had to address with Granfia right away is definitely its rearguard reliancy. Being needy on having multiple rear guards onto the board that generate you plant tokens and as part of your offense is a huge weakness for Granfia. That's why when Gandiva came out, it just decimated so many of their decks because they couldn't maintain a battle formation or a board to fight the deck back properly. And with Granfia, it was even worse because since you put all of your gauges and invest all of your resources into getting more plant tokens into Noblesse Rose's gauge, losing Noblesse Rose with no protection definitely messed this deck up. While looking at the newer support, I was looking at 2 key things. The first thing was, how could I get more rear guards onto the board at a low cost? Now, in my prior builds for Granfia, I played Petal Performing Diantha, as well as Alania. Diantha and Alania are the original revival cards from the Stoichea Nation. These cards have the effects to bring back units who are grade 2 or lower or grade 3 or lower and then gets them onto the board, and they have power up effects given to the unit or given to themselves. For the longest time period, Diantha was the best of this because she was a grade 1 unit that could be used as a booster and then counterblast to revive something. I didn't really like Alania because I wanted my front row to be saved for the Ran Orangeries, and also because of how this deck works formation-wise, you have to have certain pieces in certain places, so Alania just wasn't a good option. For a long time, Diantha held that spot. However, in the most recent set of Cardfight Vanguard Divine Z, we received a brand new card called Alvina. Alvina is a brand new energy revival card who has the ability of Energy Blasting 3 to get back an order from your drop zone or get back a grade 1 or lower unit from your drop zone and call it to rear guard circled. The best part about Alvina is the fact that she's available to use at any time as long as you have 3 energy. That means if we go second, we have access to her. If we need her in the later game, we'll have access to her. Granfia's new support does not rely on any sort of energy usage outside of Alvina and another card potentially. Being able to take advantage of energy in a deck that originally had no use for it feels pretty good. And with the introduction of Alvina also came another very important card for this deck. It is our Regalius Order Bracing Angel Ladder. This very powerful Regalius piece has the effect to apply 5,000 power to your Vanguard, move it into the soul, draw a card, and then apply a targeting restriction effect onto your rear guards. This is huge because even for a turn, if you get to hold on to the gauges for your Noblesse Rose token and protect your rear guards, that extra turn having your board might be all that's needed to help you win the games. This definitely helps get past very popular decks right now like Shoujo Doji or Gandiva from Dragon Empire, or even Nubatama's Shiranui that can go ahead and dominate and retire units. This protects it from all of that. So having that protection from top tier decks such as the three I just stated gives Granfia a fighting chance against these decks that have the power to decimate everything that Granfia is working towards. Bracing Angel Ladder also fixed my next issue with the deck that I want to talk about, which is the card advantage for Granfia. Granfia has gotten some very interesting resource management support pieces like Fairy of Candor Darien as well as Lustre Impact Dragon. Both of these units have the ability to draw you cards depending on the circumstances which you have going on with Granfia, and they were great staples for the deck for a very long time period. But like I stated, they're interesting draw pieces because they're not exactly free or the easiest to get. The Lustre Impact Dragon requires you to be at 33k power or more at the end of the battle that Granfia attacks, and Fairy of Candor Darien requires you to have the Noblesse Rose token live in order to even get the draw going. You have no way of drawing cards in the early game until you set up for Granfia to get the draw off of 1, and then until you are at the stage pretty much grade 3 turn to get the draw for Granfia, which is going to be like difficult depending on what sort of matchup you're playing with. Now all Token Rush decks got fantastic support with the brand new friendly Broccoli. This unit is amazing. He is a 15k/10k shield unit as long as you have a token unit always on the board, plant token or Noblesse. Also, he has a fantastic effect where when he's placed on the rearguard circle, if you have a token unit on the board, you may counterblast 1 to draw a card. This card self-replaces itself, makes it a very good attacker as well as shield defense piece for any plant token rush deck, and then this deck is very much welcome. In addition to this, we also got our new Energy Cycler. Sea Rumble Brave Shooter has been fantastic as a Ride Cycler piece. You can convert that energy into extra draw power, and his Persona Ride skill is great too. Being able to use energy or CB to get back a card from your drop zone that's grade 2 or less to our hand might help us get the key piece that we need for victory. With all of this knowledge that has been accumulated for Granfia, I think it's about time I show you guys my take on Granfia for the current format of Cardfight Vanguard Divine Z. And here it is, folks. This is my current take on Lavien Lord Granfia for the current format of Cardfight Vanguard Divine Z. Now, one thing I did not discuss in here, and I think it's a very important card to talk about, is my ride line. In every iteration of Granfia, I always played the Granfia ride line because it gave you a plant token and it lets you hold on to one card to ride up to the next level. However, in this format, I have made one drastic change for this deck which I do not see a lot of people doing. My ride line is no longer the Granfia ride line. I have switched over to the Roroa ride line for two simple reasons. The first reason is because early game aggression. Granfia needs to dominate in the early game like Lianorn does for this deck to have any chance to put up a fight with other decks. Your early game has to be solid. You have to be making those plant tokens. You have to be making those good numbers. You have to get that broccoli live. You cannot afford to have a weak early game because if your early game is shaky, or unless you're forced to play slow for whatever reason it might be, you're going to put yourself in a difficult position. Granfia needs to match the same speed in early game as other decks do, like Shoujo Doji and Lianorn, for it to keep up with these other decks. And with the introduction of this ride line also means the second reason, more plant tokens. In this iteration of Granfia, I am playing less plant token generators as I have in others because I need to make space for the better resource management pieces to fix the prior issues that Granfia had. The Aurora ride line, unlike the Granfia ride line, will give you 2 plant tokens versus Granfia giving you 1 plant token. And you might be wondering, was it worth it to give that 1 extra card for a plant token? Yes, it was. The Ride Cycler, Broccoli, we have ways of getting these cards back to our hand, but getting that extra plant token is huge because it's another card that becomes a plant gauge for your Granfia on your first turn. Or if you go second, it gives you a better fighting chance of making a board while using less cards from your hand to fight against your opponent. On top of that, that extra plant gauge does matter because remember, Lustre Impact Dragon does not allow you to draw a card until you're at 33k power at the end of that battle. Because we have to have a total of 5 to 6 plant gauges prior to Granfia swinging to get to 48k power, then give it 15 to go ahead and get that draw, we need that 1 extra plant gauge. This ride line definitely is a drastic change for this deck, and a lot of people don't see it coming, but I do think it's worth it. It helps you maintain, again, the same early game aggression that other decks have, as well as give you an extra plant gauge to meet the power threshold needed for Luster Impact Dragon skill or other card effects later in future Granfia decks. To discuss one of the new additions for the deck, it definitely is the Sea Rumble Brave Shooter. I am maxing this card out at 4. Sea Rumble Brave Shooter's draw effect is just extremely important for this deck. Going second for Granfia is really bad, so having a defensive energy skill is good because you get to draw more cards, keep protecting yourself, but also having that offensive energy skill in the late Persona Ride game, as I stated, is huge for this deck. You need to see certain pieces in certain spots. You need to make sure you have at least 3 plant gauges all the time. Sea Rumble Brave Shooter puts in so much work for this deck, and it helps this deck maintain early game card advantage so that you can protect yourself while also put good up offense against these other decks that are really fast right now in this current format. I definitely do think that a lot of Granfia players, when I look at their list, are not incorporating enough of these or incorporating it at all, and it fixes so many of Granfia's card advantage issues in the early game and late game, and I think that this is a big opportunity that this deck is missing out when people are choosing not to play it. Now, I have seen arguments for other cards, older cards like our Clapping Dragon. Clapping Dragon for a long time was a good card to have in the deck because it made a magic number. You always had a full back row. But I think Clapping Dragon is no longer good because right now the early game is where it's at in a lot of Divine Z matches. If you're not doing like 3 attacks in the early game, or if you're not like building up huge amounts of card advantage, it feels like you're like failing or falling apart. For Granfia, it's the aggression route because it's how this deck plays, so I definitely chose that. Rumble, being able to draw cards, keep us up offensively or defensively, is fantastic for this deck. With our card advantage up, our plant token's good, seeing all the pieces, I want to go back to the Bracing Angel Ladder as well as the Alvina. These cards are really important for your control matchups, decks like Blangdemeyer or updated Gandiva decks, especially with Gandiva getting a new mask soon, is really important. These cards help improve your defense and also maintain your board formation for a very low cost, and I think that they're staples for this deck now. I think that if I had the Space Mariner copy of Alvina, I would go ahead and put it in. You can definitely take out a copy of Rosarium, if anything, to put in a 4th Alvina. I actually think that's a legitimate option because Alvina can bring back some of the other grade 1 pieces you might need at the time. Rosarium can come back, Darien can come back. If you want mushrooms for the extra push, it can come back. But another key thing about Alvina, and I like to take full advantage of all my cards, is the fact that she gave me the opportunity to play an order. An order in this deck outside of the Regalia's piece because she can't add it back. That order, as you can see, is my meta call right now, which is Bullet Seed Machine Gun. This is a Blitz order. I did not talk about this deck, but it goes into our card advantage problem. Blitz Seed Machine Gun is a Blitz order with the ability to counterblast 1 for cost and give 10,000 power to unit being attacked. It then will apply an effect onto the Vanguard that states, when your opponent's units in the front row stand or is placed on the rear guard circle, this unit gets power plus 5,000 to the end of the turn. In certain matchups, like Shoujo Doji, like Shiranui, you're going to see a lot of multi-attacks. That plus 5k will matter every single time, as if they see 2 calls or 2 restands, that's 10k power to your Vanguard. On top of that, this Blitz order has effect that lasts until the entirety end of the turn, which means that we'll have this effect throughout the entirety of our turn, which is less cards to guard with. So again, cards like our Sea Rumble Brave Shooter, Broccoli, if it's still alive, these defensive pieces become a lot better, and because you're not committing as many cards to block now, your resource management subtly improves that way. After addressing all of Granfia's problems and taking this deck to the next level, I want to hear you guys' thoughts about it in the comment section below. Tell me what you guys think about Granfia, and did I really go out there, play with this new updated Granfia, and tell me what you guys think about it against the current meta. It definitely is nowhere near at the top tier level that I want it to be in the future, as it does have some stones that need to get past and some challenges it's always going to have. But I think that this version of Granfia, my version of Granfia, is definitely a unique and interesting, fresh take on a deck that fell into obscurity. Let me know what you guys think about this deck in the comment section below, and with that being said, card fighters, I will catch you later. Peace.